boy Luke here for our Monday Night Football preview between the Giants and the Buccaneers. Going to be another high-scoring affair, so plenty of fantasy points on the table, and of course, plenty of large field GPPs to try and take down as well. For this video, we're going to do it in a little bit of a different format. Rather than going over my set option values and captains, we're just going to go through the entire player pool, something like what we usually do for one of my live streams. A lot of people have said that they really prefer that type of content, just getting to see all the numbers and of course be talking about them as we go through it. So we'll go ahead and try that out for this time around. If you guys prefer this type of video, go ahead and let me know down in the comments. And if you prefer the format we were using before, go ahead and let me know as well. Doing a little bit of a trial run this week, especially since we don't have golf in the mix. But without further delay, let's hop right into the player pool here for Monday Night Football. So now you guys see our projections page. This is what I have up on Patreon. I'm always updating this, changing it due to injuries, changing it due to different narratives or news that comes out from any beat reporters, that kind of thing. So if you guys want access to all of this data so you can use it in your own optimizers, so you guys can get all the latest updates, that kind of thing, make sure to check out the link in the description. But at the top of the board, because we have a relatively high scoring game here, even though the Buccaneers are favored by a good amount, we expect plenty of fantasy scoring. So as a result, these quarterbacks are going to be priorities for tonight's slate. First and foremost, we have Tom Brady, who's arguably the best play on the entire slate. Obviously, one of the highest projections, actually the highest projection on the slate as of right now at 20.4 points. And overall, I don't think you have to overthink it. Tom Brady is going to be a good play tonight. He's going to be extremely high owned. You can see as of right now, I haven't projected in over 93% of lineups between the flex and the captain position. And I'm going to probably have more. Probably going to have him in every single lineup. He's been immaculate this year in terms of his stats. He's been good in terms of his efficiency, his per snap numbers, and of course, they've ran a ton of plays over there in Tampa. So I agree with this type of projection. He is going to be one of my highest owned players. Daniel Jones is also going to be one of my higher owned players as well. You can see I have him projected for a good projection there at 18.6 points. Is somebody who's not only going to make my pool at flex, but also at captain. He brings rushing upside to the table that Tom Brady, quite frankly, just can't match. So in terms of their ceilings, I'd argue that Daniel Jones has a higher ceiling than Tom Brady. Tom Brady just has a much higher median projection. So if you're playing cash, you definitely want to go with Tom Brady at captain, but you could potentially be talking about Daniel Jones at captain in GPPs. He just has that kind of upside. If he goes out there, gets you 70 rushing yards, gets you 300 yards passing like a Justin Herbert did last night, he actually did even better than that, going to break the slate, you're going to have him at captain. So definitely like that potential right there. So that's it for the quarterbacks. Let's move on to these running backs now. I think Leonard Fournette is definitely an interesting option, particularly if this is a stomping of this Giants team. You know, as of right now, Vegas has the line, still a relatively large line, but I think a lot closer than a lot of people would have expected it to be. So Leonard Fournette, in a blowout of sorts, in a kind of stomping of this team, he would play very well. He already sees a ton of touches for this offense, but particularly when they're playing from ahead. Last week, when they had that down game against the Washington football team, he didn't see as many touches. His production really saw a huge downturn as well. So overall, I do expect him to have a rebound game here, particularly because I expect the Buccaneers to go out and win. And anytime you have somebody getting a ton of touches in a relatively high-scoring game, you're going to want to make them a priority. So definitely seeing some ownership, particularly at captain. He's seeing a lot more expected captain ownership than he should be for somebody at sub 30% ownership. Again, a lot of it just comes down to game script. People are betting that, you know, Buccaneers are going to go out there, win this by 2, even 3 touchdowns. And in those type of games, you're probably looking at a Leonard Fournette captain being optimal. So I don't hate him. I actually have him in my captain pool, just not my highest owned captain. I expect this to be a little bit more competitive than that type of game, but wanted to go ahead and throw that out there. If you're somebody who sees this game being a blowout, which we haven't seen that many blowouts during primetime games, that's why I'm a little bit cautious with this type of approach. But by all means, go ahead and use him at captain. So you would definitely be contrarian. In my opinion, it's well within the range of outcomes. It's just something that we haven't seen quite very often of late. Next up, we have Saquon Barkley, who as of right now is a game time decision, but he practiced all last week during the bye week, also practiced this week. So all signs are that he should be able to play tonight. Again, if you guys are on the Patreon, I'll make sure to give you guys all the inactives and inactives later on this afternoon. Also talking about whether he's going to play all the snaps. We're going to have to go ahead and see from their head coach. A very good chance that he's on a snap count, that he's only going to play 50, 60% of snaps. Devontae Booker, in any instance tonight, if Barkley's active, he's not going to be in play, just a little bit too expensive. You know, if he was closer to $1,200, $1,000, that kind of thing, we'd probably be talking about him, but with only 40% of the snaps, not going to be in play. few of the other running backs we could consider would be Giovanni Bernard and Ronald Jones II. You can see both of them are in my player pool. Ronald Jones II has been getting 5 or 6 touches pretty much every single game. The only exception last week when they were playing from behind, really had to stick to a pass-heavy approach. And Ronald Jones II, is just a little bit worse of a receiving back than somebody like Leonard Fournette. Fournette's also a little bit of a better blocker, so that's why you saw him playing that entire game. Giovanni Bernard, on the other hand, is somebody who potentially, regardless of game script, is going to get touches. They use him as the primary receiving back in that backfield in Tampa Bay. Also somebody, he's a third down specialist, just very smart running back, very good at picking up blitzes, and they trust him to go ahead and do so. So I like him there at $1,800. I like him a lot more than somebody like Ronald Jones II. We know that Bernard's going to see touches. The issue is the ownership. You can see Ronald Jones II coming in with a third of the ownership of somebody like a Giovanni Bernard. So for that reason, he makes him a little bit sneakier. I like both plays. Both of them are going to be in my player pool. Probably right around the 25% mark for each of them if I had to guess their ownership. I'll cycle back to Saquon Barkley because I didn't really get to get all of my thoughts there out about him. Obviously going to be a game time decision, but if he plays, especially at lower ownership, just 21.3% and a very good price tag at $7,800, he makes a very good tournament play. However, in cash, probably wouldn't be a priority for me just because we don't know how many snaps he's going to play. I mean, if we get a report this afternoon that he's fully good to go, going to play 100% of snaps, then he becomes a good cash play. But as of right now, there's a little bit of uncertainty around his availability. So in cash, we're going to have to wait to see on it. But in tournaments, pretty much no matter what, if he's active, go ahead and fire him up. Next up, we have our wide receivers. So at $10,200, Mike Evans is going to be the clear number 1 wide receiver tonight. Chris Godwin is active, does not have an injury designation, but by all means, all reports, is still having issues with that foot. Has been gimping on it all week, hasn't been able to practice fully. So for him to have no injury designation, I'm not sure I completely buy that. There was a lot of talk earlier on in the week that he was going to be a game time decision. We didn't even know whether he was going to suit up. That's why we see Tyler Johnson down there at $5,000 priced up, everything like that. So again, I expect Chris Godwin to be a good play tonight. I have him both at captain and at flex. But there is definitely a huge opportunity for Mike Evans to have a big game. Godwin could be out there more as a distraction than anything. I mean, we already have Antonio Brown, who's out for this game. Rob Gronkowski is also a game time decision. So if he ends up sitting, Chris Godwin would have been out. This would have been really bad news for this team. So it could be more of a ceremonial start for him. And again, this is speculation, but I've seen this time and time again in the NFL. Guys putting people out there like a DeAndre Hopkins for the Cardinals, who was by no means healthy enough to be playing football. Now they're actually benching Hopkins because they can see that he's not healthy enough to be playing football. And they wanted to use him as a distraction, and it worked for a week or two. They were still giving double coverage to Hopkins and single coverage everywhere else, but teams caught on. They figured it out. There was no reason for him to be out there anymore, and now he's benched. Chris Godwin, nowhere near as severe as an injury. It's not quite as a lingering injury as somebody like a Hopkins. It's the same type of idea, though. I do expect him to be a little bit hampered there. We'll have to get closer to game time if we get any reports of whether he looks like he's fully healthy or anything like that out there. As of right now, I'm treating it like he's healthy, but I have that concern in the back of my mind. So that's why I prefer somebody like Mike Evans over Chris Godwin in this instance. We don't have those health issues. We're also dealing with somebody who's just a higher ceiling player in Evans. We've seen him catch 2-3 touchdowns in games, 200 yards plus, that kind of thing. So I like him there at $10,200. In terms of the ownership, you're getting similar numbers on both of them, right? 30.3%, 27.8% for Godwin. At captain, very similar numbers as well. Obviously a little bit higher for Evans, but that just comes down to the safety, and I'd much rather take the safer option if I have to choose between the two. But both of them are in my player pool. Just quite a bit more Evans than I have of Godwin. Let's go over to some of these other wide receivers. A lot of the guys on the Giants. Kenny Galladay is an all right play. He has been very underwhelming for this offense. He's been dealing with some lingering injuries. Doesn't have an injury designation for this game, so perhaps that's a sign of things to come. If he has his legs under him, he's definitely going to be a much better wide receiver. I just prefer Kadarius Toney for the same reason that I like Mike Evans more than Chris Godwin. We know he's healthy, right? The guy's explosive. He's arguably a better wide receiver than Kenny Galladay, even as a rookie wide receiver. So I like going to him there. He's obviously higher owned. But just like Mike Evans, you're getting that safety with that ownership, and it's not a huge difference between the two to begin with. So I have Toney at captain as well. He has a lot of upside, and at just $6,800, just 10,000 $200 at captain. Gives you a lot of flexibility with your other positions. You're likely to be able to fit in both quarterbacks in those type of builds, potentially even another stud wide receiver, and round it out with a few good values. Let's go to the bottom of the wide receiver board. Tyler Johnson is in my pool, but not quite as high on him as it would have been if he was $1,200. I mean, it was priced up because Antonio Brown is out, potentially because Chris Godwin was going to sit as well. So at $5,000, he's not one of the higher efficiency plays on the slate. Points per dollar is definitely not popping off the board. In fact, one of the lowest in terms of wide receivers on this slate. But it's somebody that I'll have in my player pool just because I do see a chance for him to go out there, get a touchdown, get 60 yards, that kind of thing. Just not a priority for me on the slate. Somebody I am prioritizing a little bit more would be Darius Slayton. He's only $3,200, which definitely seems a little bit low for him. He's going to be the number 2, or actually I'd say number 3 wide receiver for this Giants team, but he's not going to line up as the number 3 wide receiver in the slot. He's more than likely going to be one of those outside targets. I definitely see them using Tony in the slot. You can be a little bit more versatile in the slot. You can use him on some of those screen passes, that kind of thing. Whereas Slayton is definitely a deep play threat. Definitely somebody you want on the outside, a bigger bodied wide receiver. Also a little bit faster in terms of straight line speed than somebody like Tony. Tony's much better at cutting and making those short cutting routes like usually a slot wide receiver does. So Darius Slayton I do like. He just has that big play upside. I do have him at captain as well because he's only $3,200, and at just $4,800 at captain, you can essentially play whoever the hell you want in the other positions. You can play both quarterbacks. You can go to Leonard Fournette and Mike Williams and still make a relatively competitive lineup. So I like going there a whole lot, especially because of his deep play threat. Let's talk about the really cheap wide receivers. Jalen Darden, I'm not a huge fan of. He's $600. He's seen some production with Antonio Brown out, with Chris Godwin out as well. But I don't expect him to have a huge role in tonight's game. John Ross III, not going to have a huge role either. He's playing the number 4 wide receiver role for the Giants. He does have a huge deep play threat, though. Extremely fast. Obviously broke the combine record for speed. You like to see that. He's also caught in some deep balls this year, but he's extremely hit or miss. So he's purely a tournament play, purely a flyer play down low at just $400. And the last guy we'll give any type of live action time here to would be Colin Johnson at $200. He's at least going to play for this Giants team, particularly in the red zone. He's a huge wide receiver, very good at high pointing the ball. Again, just a pure flyer, though. Not somebody that we can count on to get many snaps or much production at all, but only $200, right? The dead minimum, and there's a lot of flexibility that comes with that. Let's go down to the tight ends now, though. I have Evan Ingram at $6,600. I don't love the play. I was thinking about putting him in my player pool just because he's a stud option on the slate, but at $6,600, that's far too expensive. This is a guy who's essentially completely touchdown dependent. Doesn't see much usage in this offense. And now that they're going to have Barkley back, now that they have a relatively healthy wide receiver core, obviously Sterling Shepard not playing, I expect him to definitely regress in his value. Somebody I'd much rather play would be Rob Gronkowski. Obviously, we have to make sure that he's playing. He's still a game-time decision as of right now, but has by far the best rapport of anybody with Tom Brady, which, no duh, they've been playing together for like 20 years now. He's also somebody who's had a lot of production this year, particularly early on in the year. He's catching touchdowns left and right. Obviously, he's been dealing with some injuries. That's why we haven't quite seen him be himself. But all the news is that he looks a lot better. The reason why he's been limited this week in practice has been due to rest. Hopefully not due to availability. We'll know a whole lot if he actually ends up suiting up tonight. If he ends up being active, one of my favorite plays in the slate. Definitely somebody I would be using at captain as well. And now you can see a lot of these tight ends I'm not really considering outside Rob Gronkowski. Cameron Brate, Kyle Rudolph, they're going to be backup tight ends for teams that don't really utilize their tight ends a whole lot outside their starters. So I don't like going there a whole lot. If we're going to take a shot at any of these guys, though, I guess it would be O.J. Howard. He's only $1,200. So you get a huge price discount over some of those other options, almost 3 times less expensive. You're also dealing with somebody who has much more top-end, deep play upside. He's truly one of the specimens at this tight end position. Extremely athletic, extremely fast. Faster than some wide receivers, in fact. So if anybody's going to go out there and get you a 60, 70-yard touchdown at tight end, it's going to be O.J. Howard. So that's why he's my player pool over some of these other options. Truly the only upside that somebody like a Cameron Brate or Kyle Rudolph brings to the table is catching like a 2-3 yard touchdown. And sure, that works every once in a while in Showdown. I'd much rather target that high-end upside, though. Somebody like an O.J. Howard that can literally break the slate with one catch. Caden Smith's questionable, probably not even going to play, so don't want to go there. Darren Fells hardly even plays for Tampa Bay, probably don't want to go there either. They're at least expected to be active, though. Maybe not Caden Smith with the injury. Let's go down to the defenses now. So I definitely am okay with playing both of these defenses, even though this is expected to be a relatively high-scoring game. First and foremost, there should be some interceptions and fumbles in this game. Both of them are extremely high-volume offenses, run a ton of plays. Both of them also turn the ball over a ton, particularly the Buccaneers of late. So I don't hate going to the Giants, even if they end up getting torched for like 35, 40 actual points. They could still score a defensive touchdown. They could get 3 or 4 turnovers, that kind of thing. Get some sacks and still pay it off that way. So I don't hate it. In Showdown at $2,800, they don't have to do a whole lot to pay it off. And of course, on the Buccaneers side of things, anytime you're playing Daniel Jones, who is a pick-6 machine, you want to have that defense. He's $5,200, so obviously a lot more expensive than the Giants. So if I was going to take a defense, which one I prefer, would definitely be the Giants, just because of the price tag there. But Buccaneers definitely have a lot of top-end upside, could potentially put up a really good number on defense. We've seen them shut out some good offenses in the past. So definitely well within their range of outcomes. And now let's finish it up with our kickers. So both kickers, they're all right options in my opinion. Not anyone you're going to hang your hat on, not anyone you're going to use as a foundational core play. But at $4,200 and $4,000 respectively, it's a relatively high over-under game. Usually those are the instances where we want to target these kickers. They can get to the 10 to 12 point fantasy mark, could end up being optimal. Will be in my player pool, obviously not at captain. And that's it for the player pool, guys. That's all for the Monday Night Football preview. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you have as your favorite captain play. For me, definitely between 2 players in particular. One of them going to be Tom Brady at quarterback. I think he has a ton of top-end upside in the slate. Number 2 would be Mike Evans. I also think that he has a lot of top-end upside, particularly if Chris Godwin isn't 100%. All the injury reports are that he seems to be okay, but I'm not necessarily sure I buy that. So I think Mike Evans has a big night tonight. But go ahead and let me know who you guys have down in the comments. And as always, I appreciate all of your support here on the channel, an absolute ton. If you guys haven't already liked the video, if you haven't already gotten a chance to subscribe, I highly recommend you guys go ahead and do so. We're going to have plenty of NFL content coming throughout the week, whether it's for Showdown, for the main slate. We have some extra NFL content this week as well because we don't have a golf tournament. We're going to be talking about a reaction to the Week 11 slate. We'll be going through some ownership numbers, some just extra content for you guys I have in the works because we have some extra time. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of that. And good luck with all of your lineups for tonight. Until next time, peace.